Oh, I want to tell the story about Dwayne Samples. In the 81, 1981 session, when I was first chairman of the Judiciary Committee, uh, there was a guy named Randy something who was called the I-5 killer, I think, and he was a serial killer of some kind, and Chris Van Dyke, Dick Van Dyke's son, was the district attorney for Marion County at that time, and he had done a massive investigation and had managed to have a trial and get a conviction on this fellow that was proven to be a serial killer. And Judy, my wife Judy, and I were having dinner together alone at a restaurant and bar in Salem, and it was a nice spring day, and we were relaxed and just enjoying each other and ourselves, and in walks Chris Van Dyke, and maybe I was part of showing off to my wife, but I got up and said, or I guess motioned him to come over to our table, and I said, well, congratulations on getting the conviction of Randy, whatever the guy's name was. And Van Dyke said, well, yeah, but you just get one thing accomplished, and then there's another one that jumps up that's upsets you. And I said, oh, what are you talking about? He says, well, Dwayne Samples, Governor Atiyeh has just commuted his sentence. And, oh, well, who's Dwayne Samples? I don't remember if I'd ever heard of the man before that day or not. I might have, but he says, yeah, well, he's the fellow who stabbed two women in Silverton, and one of them ran out in the street holding her innards in her hands and survived, but the other one died, and it was a vicious, terrible, sadistic murder and attack, and now the governor has commuted his sentence. And I said, wow. So I went back over to the Capitol and started talking to some of my colleagues, and very soon we got up two bills, and one of them allowed, with a majority vote in both the House and the Senate, the overriding of a governor's commutation, not a pardon. It didn't interfere with the pardon power at all, but a commutation. Pardon is, these let them walk out. Commutation is the governor can shorten a sentence. Well, he'd commuted Dwayne Samples' sentence, and he was going to get out real soon. And as I researched it, I can't remember now, because Chris Van Dyke must have given it to me, but he gave me Dwayne Samples' journal, and it was about that thick and a big bound thing. And I remember I read up to page 300 and something in the thing, and he was. Oh, I was saying, so one of the bills was to allow the legislature to overturn a commutation, and the other one, I think, was a constitutional amendment to allow the legislature to overturn. Anyway, there were two bills, and they both were attacking the governor's power in the area of commutations. Well, the ACLU went nuts. We were interfering with the balance of power between the three branches of government, and blah, blah, blah. Well, I wanted to raise enough of a fuss, if I could, to keep the guy in prison. I was really more interested in that than I was in changing the law over the long haul. But and we accomplished that. The governor did announce, for the first time in the history of the state, the revocation of a commutation. Well, as we began digging into it, before there were any votes on any, it was going to be a quick trip out of the Senate Judiciary Committee because I chaired it and I had the support of the committee members. But before it got to the floor, we needed to know more about what we were doing. I'm laughing because I did this really fast and in a very knee-jerk way. And I was looking to be have publicity about it, but read his journal, found out that he was repeatedly talking in there about finding a woman, and I can't remember the word for it, but it was a woman who was a dominant, like somebody that was into sadomasochism, and have them eviscerate him or cut his penis off during sex. And as I read on and on, I finally found the place where he said, well, maybe he'd practice up on a woman doing the stabbing and cutting himself before he talked a woman into doing it to him. But it was this sick stuff. And so when we got the bill up on the Senate floor, I quoted from that book and told people, this is a vicious, psychopathic killer, and he's about to be released. And as I researched it, I found out that there was a woman who was prominent in a advertising agency in Portland who had gotten involved with the governor in raising money so he could have more money to entertain. He felt that he and his wife didn't have enough money to do the entertaining they needed to do in the governor's mansion. Well, and then by coincidence, this woman in the ad agency that was raising the money was a weirdo, and she had read, well, no, she got in touch with Dwayne Samples, who was a Stanford college graduate and a Vietnam veteran, and she courted him and had conjugal visits with him and married him. And the Rolling Stones magazine came and covered the wedding. I didn't ever see the magazine that showed it, but I was told that they did. And it was this kinky thing about, oh, this woman had fallen in love with this serial killer, not exactly, he'd stabbed 2 women, killed one. It was kinky. And the other thing so she wanted to get Vic to commute his sentence. And that's where they were raising money for Vic to entertain, and then they came around on the side and said, oh, by the way, we need your help. We need you to commute this man's sentence. Well, the basis they had for urging the governor and selling the governor on the commutation was that the first time Dwayne Samples had come up for parole, he was turned down flat. And I may have that wrong, but he may not have even been in long enough to be coming up for parole yet. But he hired somebody to help him try and figure out a way to get the parole board to release him eventually. Well, they told him, well, you need to go beyond this thing about, you said, well, you were under stress and you lost your mind and you were using a lot of drugs and that addled your brain. You need to develop the concept that you were suffering from post-Vietnam post-traumatic stress And so then he started seeing a psychologist and started working on this Vietnam post-traumatic stress business, and his file started getting thicker and thicker about that. And then they went to Vic and said, this poor man went and fought to protect our country, and the trauma he saw there, the violence and bloodshed he saw there, addled his mind, and he temporarily went crazy and stabbed these two women. And that worked with Vic. But I pointed out in the floor speech that all that business about post-traumatic stress did not start until sometime after. It wasn't a factor in his trial. It came later, and actually, to tell the truth, I can't remember he had a trial if he pled guilty now, but at any rate, it wasn't brought up at the time of his sentencing. So we got it passed through the Senate by an overwhelming vote, and I made one of the most florid speeches I ever made, more or less waving his journal around. And then my, at that time, ally, Ted Kulongoski, who was getting ready to run for governor in the 82 election, went over to the House and told some of the House members that this was violating the sensitivities of the ACLU and they should oppose it. And they did, and they blocked my bill. I wasn't all that crestfallen because there'd been a lot of publicity by then, and Vic then did rescind his commutation. But where am I going with this? We got Vic to change his mind, and we got I know. I was trying to help Ted Kulongoski, and I probably hadn't talked with him enough about it. I had no idea that he was going to go over there and carry the shield of the ACLU and kill my bill, because he was getting ready to run, and I had in my mind the second of the two bills was going to be a referral to the people to amend the Constitution to say that the legislature could overrule a commutation. And my vision was, as Ted Kulongoski traveled around the state debating the governor, you'd have people asking the governor, well, Governor Tia, why did you commute the sentence of this man that stabbed these two women and said he was crazy from being in Vietnam? And why did you do that, Governor? We hear that the woman that had married Dwayne Samples worked for the ad agency that was raising money for you and Dolores to be able to entertain. What's the deal here, Governor? But for some reason, Kulongoski didn't have stomach for all that. And it's interesting, I don't know why, I never went around and confronted him about it. So what in the hell are you doing? If you want to please the ACLU, you can tell them that I didn't vote for it. We had plenty of votes without his. But you can have the benefit of this proposed constitutional amendment that will be just a watershed for you to ask Vic why he allowed himself to get corrupted for money to entertain. But without talking to me about it, he went over and killed the bill. So that's that story. But I think I will end this tape at that point, this video, because that's a story I wanted to tell.